Alright, you guys, so I'm going to be reacting to top 10 April Fool's pranks that went too far. So let's start.
It's all a bit of fun, right? While most of us settle for simple pranks like handing out toothpaste-flavoured Oreos or supergluing our family members to the toilet, others take it much further, like much further. Most people would agree that the 10 committed pranksters in this video went a little too far on the day. Amazing!
Alright.
Number 10. School shooting prank. Certain things are naturally funny, like people who think their Oompa Loompa inspired tan looks good. Then there are things you should just never joke about. You know, like school shootings. Well, Angela Timmons clearly didn't get this memo. In 2014, she was an employee at Virginia College in Spartanburg and decided that despite her daughter living far away in New York, she was still totally prankable. With little foresight, she texted her daughter that the school she was working at was in the middle of a school shooting and that she was hiding for safety. Quite understandably, after failing to respond to her daughter's replies, her daughter called the police, who were quick to respond with teams of officers turning up at the school. The cops certainly weren't laughing when they found out it was an April Fool's prank and hauled her off to the county jail for breach of peace and disturbing a school. Maybe next time she'll stick to whoopee cushions under the principal's chair.
Wow.
Number 9. Murder
That's
prank.
messed up. Like,
I get it.
why would you even think of, like, doing a school shooting prank? I don't even know. Like, you know you're gonna get in trouble for that shit.
We love pranking. It is a load of fun. But there are limits, people. Susan Hudson took it too far. In short, she planned to convince her sister that she killed her husband. Let's hear a little from her about how she did it.
I said, Helen, I shot my husband. I'm cleaning up the mess. Let's go bury him in Blackwater.
Probably rather shaken up by the whole conversation, her sister called another family member, and then word went around, prompting law enforcement to raid her house with guns drawn. Here is what she had to say.
And next thing I knew, there was a lie everywhere. The response was excellent.
Whilst I do appreciate her commitment to the cause, her lack of foresight is worrying. I mean, those poor officers were probably expecting a bloody murder scene, but instead they got an overweight woman with a party popper. Apart from wasting police resources, it must have been pretty embarrassing, so really the joke is on her. She wasn't charged even as her husband returned in unmurdered form. Let's end this one with her words of wisdom.
Be careful on the April Fool's jokes.
She sticks out her tongue.
Number 8.
What the fuck, bro? Yeah, it's funny. At least she didn't get in trouble. I mean, she didn't really do nothing that bad. Like, I guess kind of is fucking kind of bitchy, but you know.
Military intelligence escalates foreign relations. You know what's not likely to stabilize tensions in an otherwise volatile region of the world? A prank. So bad that Susan from the previous example probably thought it up. You see, back in 1986, an unspecified Israeli intelligence officer publicized a false report describing an alleged attempt to assassinate the Lebanese Muslim leader, Nabi Berri. The false report fooled a lot of people, like the Israeli state radio station and the Minister of Defense, obviously. Berri and others in Lebanese media condemned the joke, which was later reported by news as being a complete hoax. Number 7. There's a chemical in your water. As this video will confirm, radio DJs are notorious for over-the-top April Fool's Day tricks misleading the public. And with this one, it's all in the details. So, back in 2002, a pair of Kansas City DJs announced that the water supply in nearby Olathe contained high levels of a naturally occurring substance called dihydrogen monoxide. Common side effects of this substance include increased sweating, urination, and even suffocation. Citizens became increasingly concerned, and 150 of them called the water department, with more than 24 calling 911. One city official even remarked that it was a terrorist attack. The thing is, dihydrogen monoxide isn't some poison. It's the chemical name of H2O, or water. The hoax has been replicated many times before, and whilst it's crude, it's a pretty
that word
disturbing one
did
to play on
sound
the
very familiar to me, so that's funny.
people. Number 6. Cheap holiday prank. To commemorate the 100-year anniversary of the first round-the-world tour by travel agent Thomas Cook, the London Times had a great idea that would definitely cause queues to form outside the travel agents. In a full article, they noticed how the first tour only cost participants 210 guineas, which was approximately $575 back then. Due to inflation, and to put that in perspective, the price of the tour today would have cost tens of thousands of dollars. A few pages back after the article, the Times noted that they were to honour this trip by offering 1,000 lucky people the chance to go on a similar trip for the exact same price the original trip cost, $575. Looking for a bargain, huge lines formed outside Thomas Cook offices, and the travel agent was inundated with calls. To put it lightly, the people who had queued for hours for the deal were not amused when they realised it was all a big joke. So much so that the reporter was fired for it. Number 5.
Wow.
Deadline stress. Coming up to the end of March 2008, Glenn Howlett, an employee at London City Council, was on a much-needed vacation. You know, the time to de-stress, forget about work, and that sort of thing. Well, unfortunately for him, just because he was on holiday didn't mean his colleagues wouldn't conspire to form an evil prank against him. They knew he was working on a large project, which was due shortly after he returned to work, so they had a plan to pile up the pressure. They sent him a letter on official city letterhead telling him that his project was now due early on April the 1st. Panicked, and likely unaware of the detail on the deadline date, Howlett cut his vacation short and worked himself into such a panic that he began to experience heart palpitations. Eventually, he collapsed from the stress, and the prank escalated quickly when he opted for an early retirement instead of risking his health over the project. Only after realising that his heart wasn't really in it, did his colleagues finally confess that it was all a joke. Howlett responded by suing for damages, settling for $1.5 million in court. And as a consequence, the city banned all employees from pulling any more pranks. Seems like Glenn got the last laugh. Number 4. Titanic replica sighting. 2001 was the year that a local DJ in Brighton, England, thought it would be appropriate to carry out this prank. He publicised on Southern FM radio that a full-size replica of the Titanic would be visible from the cliffs at Beachy Head as it sailed along the Sussex coast. Braving the treacherous winds and notoriously dangerous Beachy Head cliffs, hundreds of people turned up to capture a glimpse of this rare event. Not only should they have checked their calendar, but the name of the company which purportedly created the ship was a subtle clue. AFD stood for April Fool's Day. The disappointment was short-lived though, because the huge footfall the prank inspired placed undue stress on the cliff, which split under their weight with a 5-foot crack. Luckily, the area above the 400-foot cliff was cornered off by coast guards and local council officials, who were less than happy that public safety was put at risk. Not to mention the numerous disappointed listeners, many of whom travelled from upwards of 40 miles away. The radio station did later apologise, but they got off lightly. The cliff collapsed into the water a few days later, by which time everyone was luckily gone. Number 3. Space Shuttle in San Diego. This one wasn't entirely original. It was copied by a prank perpetrated by a Belgian newspaper in 1992, but this one was far more successful, fooling much more people. It was carried out in 1993 by Dave Rickards, a KGB FM DJ. The station name alone is enough to make me suspicious. Anyway, like the previous example, they announced that the Space Shuttle Discovery had been diverted from Edwards Air Force Base and was to land instead at Montgomery Field in San Diego. Excitedly, thousands of commuters immediately headed towards the landing site, causing huge traffic jams that lasted for about an hour. Reportedly, police were called to deal with the traffic, as around 1,000 people piled up with cameras, folding chairs, and possibly an assortment of sweets, crisps, and popcorn. As with the Titanic example, it was never going to happen. The airfield was also far too small. The prank was so poorly received that the police announced that they were going to build a radio station for the cost of the traffic enforcement officers. Number 2. Bun in the oven prank. This one's a classic, but most people agree that it's something not worth joking about. Not Tori Wheeler though. She told her boyfriend Derek Bauer that she was pregnant, something Derek got a little angry about. Then, in part 2 of her epic April Fools, Wheeler allegedly brandished a knife and threatened Derek. Apparently, tensions escalated, and Wheeler ended up biting Bauer twice. and cut him across the throat.
Oh my
After
god.
all, nothing says funny like a trip to the hospital, right? Number 1.
Wow.
This video. I may have made up all of the examples. Alright, that was a lie, but at least
Oh my
I got you
God.
doubting it for a second there. Number 1 is actually the eruption of Mount Edgecumbe. Residents of Sitka, Alaska woke on the morning of Monday, April 1st, 1974, only to see that Mount Edgecumbe, a volcano dormant for 400 years, had a menacing plume of black smoke rising from inside its crater. Residents were so concerned of an imminent eruption that they poured into the streets and even contacted local authorities, prompting a Coast Guard chopper to be sent out to investigate it. Sure enough, as the chopper pilot approached, he could see stomped out in the snow in 50-foot high black letters the words April Fools. You see, the fake eruption was the work of local 50-year-old prankster Oliver Bicker. Apparently the prank was a long time coming. He had the idea 3 years prior and collected 70 old tyres which he kept in an airplane hangar, waiting for the right year when visibility conditions were just right. The year of 1974 had just the right conditions, and he managed to fly the kerosene-soaked tyres into the volcano crater. Before you ask, they did make most necessary precautions, contacting the police and Federal Aviation Authority. They just missed the Coast Guard. The prank succeeded and was published all across the world, but some have criticised the plan as being unnecessary given the toxic fumes that were polluted. Then, 6 years later, in 1980, a similar volcano April Fools occurred, but this time, residents weren't so forgiving. This one was perpetrated by Channel 7 News, who made a special bulletin announcing that the 635-foot Great Blue Hill in Milton, Massachusetts, had erupted, with lava and ash raining down nearby homes. At the end of the segment, the reporter held up a sign that read, April Fool, but the damage was already done. By that time, local authorities had already been flooded with frantic calls, and Channel 7 had to make a formal apology. Even the executive producer responsible for the prank was fired. Which prank did you think was the worst?
That was an intense video, you guys. Well, hope you guys enjoyed. Check out the video down below, and talk to you guys later.